Hi everyone! Today we're going to learn how to find the area of a circle. And we have two different ways to do that we are going to go through. So the first way is by counting the squares if a circle is drawn on grid paper, which is like the squares in your copies. And the second way is if we draw a square around the circle, we can estimate the area of it that way. So our first method is if a circle is drawn over grid paper where all the squares on the grid are 1 centimetre squared. And the way that we're going to find the rough area of a circle, so it's really important to remember that this isn't going to be the exact area of a circle, it's kind of an estimate. So what we're going to do is we're going to count all the full squares that are in the circle, and we're also going to count any squares that are half or more in the circle. So you can see here we wouldn't count this square here because less than half of the square is surrounded by is in the circle. And we won't count any of these here because they're less than half a square. And we won't count these ones here because again they're less than half. But if the square has more than half or more than half of the square is in the circle, we'll count that square. So you can see here, if we count them all, we have 16 squares altogether. And it's also really important to remember that because we're talking about the area of the circle, we have to have our answer with centimetres squared. Alright, so you can see in our next example, if we were to use the same method, we're going to count any of the squares that have half or more of the square are in the circle. Alright, so if we look here, there's probably less than half of a square in this part, so we won't count this square or that square because they're both the same. Neither square is half or more in the circle. We won't count this square because it's less than half a square. We will count these two squares because there are two full squares. And again, we won't count either of these because they're less than half a square. We'll count these two. We won't count this one because less than half a square, and these two are less than half a square as well. So my rough estimate of the area of this circle is 4 centimetres squared because I have 4 full boxes, 4 full squares that I'd be counting. So I want you to pause the video now, and in your copies you can try to find the area of these circles by counting the boxes. So remember, you're only counting the squares if it is half or more of the square in the circle. Alright? And these are your answers whenever you want to correct them. Our next method of finding the area of a circle is if we were to draw a square around our circle. So you can see here we've got a square drawn around my circle that has the perimeter of the square just touching off the circumference of the circle. So you can see here it just touches off at each of the sides, just touches off the perimeter. The circumference and the perimeter just touch at each of the sides. So a general rule to follow is that if we draw a square like this, with the edges just touching off each other here, the area of the circle is going to be about 3/4 of the area of the square. So you can see here, if I wanted to count my boxes, I could because I have this one drawn on the grid paper. So you can see here that we have the area of our circle is going to be 12 centimetres squared. I have 12 centimetres squared in my circle when I count my boxes using the method we just used. If I were to find the area of my square, I know how to do that because I know that if I multiply my length by my width of the shape, I will find the area. So 4 multiplied by 4 will give me 16, so 16 centimetres squared. So the area of the circle is 12 centimetres squared, and the area of the square is 16 centimetres squared. So if I were to write 12 centimetres over 16 centimetres as a fraction, I could simplify that to 3/4. So that'll just show that if we are to draw a square around the circle, the area of the circle will be approximately 3/4 of the area of the square. And that's the method we're going to be using in the next few examples. So the same here in this example, we are given the length of one side of the square, which is also the length of my diameter. So I'm going to use that to find the area of the square. So you can pause the video now to do that example if you think you need a little bit more practice. So 6 centimeters is the length of one side of the square. So we have to multiply that by 6 multiplied by 6 to get the area of the square. And then find 3/4 of your answer. And don't forget your answer should have centimeters squared because we are talking about area. Sometimes then you might be shown the length of the radius of a circle, and you might need to use that to find the approximate area of that circle. So we know that the length of one side of the square is the length of the diameter. And we also know that if we multiply a radius by 2, we get the length of a diameter because the diameter is 2 radii together. So we're going to use our radius now to find the length of one side of the square, and then we'll know what to do from there. So we need to multiply our radius by 2 because that will give me the full length of one side of the circle. So 5 multiplied by 2 will give me 10. So now I know that one side of the square has a length of 10 centimeters. So then all I have to do is the exact same as what I've been doing before. I'm going to find the area of my square by multiplying my length by my width, so 10 multiplied by 10. And then I'm going to find 3/4 of that to find the area of the circle. Okay? Great job, everyone!